There are many in the international community who have wondered why Zimbabweans have not taken matters into their own hands, given the history of this government. We cannot allow this government to attempt to reclaim the moral ground to rule by pointing accusatory fingers at people who simply want to be heard and to exercise their full constitutional rights as citizens. Let's get this straight. Neither Promise Mkwananzi nor any of the others arrested today for participating in a protest sanctioned by the courts are the enemies of the people and of the state. The enemies of the state and of the people are those who ignore the rulings of the courts and a minister of Home Affairs who congratulates the police for acts of violence which another minister in the same government has called unconstitutional. It is the policemen and security personnel who obey the illegal and unconstitutional orders of their bosses, and those in ZANU-PF who are aspiring to the presidency yet are silent about acts of violence against the people who are the enemies of the state and of the people. It must be clear to those members of the international community who suggest that there is an alternative to President Robert Mugabe in ZANU-PF that there is not. It is time for all of us to be brave enough to say neither Emmerson Mnangagwa, nor Reward Mpoko, nor Grace Mugabe, nor any man or woman who condones with their silence the violence against innocent people and the violation of their constitutional rights is fit to lead the Zimbabwe we want. Now that includes civilians and those in the military who are more anxious to defend the constitutional rights of the government, but not those of the people the government is supposed to serve. We must not be afraid to remind not just the rank and file, but senior military leaders to read the Constitution, specifically Part 1, Section 208, which says, 1, members of the security services must act in accordance with this Constitution and the law. And 2, neither the security services nor any of their members may, in the exercise of their functions, A, act in a partisan manner, B, further the interests of any political party or cause, C, prejudice the lawful interests of any political party or cause, or D, violate the fundamental rights or freedoms of any person. Now, the law applies equally to generals and to officers as it does to low-level soldiers. High Court Justice Hlekani Mahera, who affirmed the right of the National Electoral Reform Agenda to conduct their march today, must be commended for her courage, something many high-ranking ZANU-PF officials lack. In her ruling, as reported even by the Herald, she ordered the police to maintain peace and barred them from interfering with the demonstrators. Here is Douglas Monzora of the MDCT speaking to journalist Fazila Mohammed outside the High Court of Zimbabwe today.
We are very happy that the High Court of Zimbabwe again has granted the order in favor of the MDC and its partners to demonstrate peacefully. They have lambasted the police for continuously abrogating the rights of the Zimbabweans, the freedom to demonstrate. And they specifically ordered the police that they must provide security and they must ensure peace. The judge also emphasized on the need of the Zimbabwean police to follow international law. We are very excited. This is a victory for democracy.
The voices of every Zimbabwean, particularly those of the faith community, denouncing this government must become even louder now. It is important to understand that when they are trying to silence Promise Mkwananzi, Zorwadza, Patson Zamara, or anyone speaking out against their violence, their goal is to silence you. It is also important to remember that there are many others, apart from the prominent voices, who were arrested today, and some who were arrested during the stairways 2 months ago, whose release we must also demand. It is urgent that we make it clear to the international community that this government not only lost the moral right to rule a long time ago, but that its continued rule poses a grave danger to the people of Zimbabwe. They unleashed their violence today, not because of the violent acts of the protesters, but because they don't want to answer the inconvenient questions they are being asked about the voters' roll, about guaranteeing that the electoral process is transparent and fair, and that the outcome of the 2018 election will reflect the true will of the people. That is really the issue we must not be distracted from. the National Electoral Reform Agenda partners plan to demonstrate again next Friday using the same court order issued by the High Court today. Violence will be unleashed by this government again on Friday if the disapproving eyes of the whole world are not focused on them. It is important that today we demand the release without charge of all who have been arrested. And as long as the members of the security establishment continue to violate the rights of the people, it is the patriotic duty of every Zimbabwean to document their names and faces to ensure that at some point they will be held to account for their actions. As we draw closer to the meeting of the United Nations General Assembly in September, I want to encourage all Zimbabweans who can to come out to the protests in New York from the 17th to the 21st of September. It is not the voice of President Mugabe insulting everyone from the podium at the United Nations that needs to be heard, but the voices of Zimbabweans making it clear to him and the international community that enough is enough. We want change in Zimbabwe, and we want it now. To want it for future generations only prolongs our suffering and that of our children. We want it for ourselves today so that we can get on with the business of building the kind of country we want for our children's children. It is our right to demand that. This is Dr. Noah Manyika from Build Zimbabwe saying, Free Promise Mkwananzi. Is there not a cause?